My dad took me turkey hunting for the first time when I was 8. I still remember almost everything about the day. It was a perfect morning. I remember looking up at the stars as we were walking in, wondering how there could possibly be so many. We walked down an old tractor path, and I didn't grow up on a farm, so everything kind of felt new and scary to me. We got about halfway down the trail, and I saw a shadowy figure in the distance. It was looking at us, and I was pretty sure it was a coyote. My dad didn't seem very nervous, but I certainly was. I stopped suddenly and tugged on his coat. I pointed at the shadowy figure as it motioned its tail. "It looked like a coyote," I whispered to him. Even in the darkness, I could see him smile. "That's not a coyote," he told me, holding back laughter. "It's a cow." We walked past, and I looked more closely and realized my mistake. It was a big brown cow. We finally got down to the bottom of the cornfield where my dad and I wanted to hunt. I knew that it was a cornfield because I could see the old corn stalks sticking up out of the tilled dirt. We set up underneath a clump of box elder trees on the edge of the field. I watched my dad set up his ground blind just like I had seen in the old hunting tapes my dad had shown me. Once he got comfortable, my dad told me that he was going to start calling. It was then that I heard my first gobble. It was nothing like I saw on TV. The gobble was crisp and yet somehow seemed to echo throughout the entire world. It really got my heart pounding. My dad's calling eventually lured in an unsuspecting Jake, which he shot purely for my entertainment. It was a morning that I will never forget, and I will always be grateful for that first turkey hunt. My name is John Lockwood, and this is the Heartshot Outdoors podcast. For this episode, we are bringing on Dave Noll from Quality Archery Designs. I met Dave shooting a commercial for them last summer. We really had an incredible time. It was the Exodus commercial that you can now see on their website. Dave, how are you doing?
Hey, John. Thanks for having me, man. That was a good time. I know I learned a lot behind the scene with you guys. That was the first time I ever got to do something like that, especially kind of from a marketing perspective. So, yeah, man, I had a blast.
Yeah, dude, it was a ton of fun, and I tell you what, it's pretty incredible how tough those broadheads are. That you can just shoot them through a steel drum like that. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive. I do the testing at QAD when we get all the steel in small batches, and we test each batch. And I have to go up there and test each model. I shoot them through the steel drum. We call it the brutality test. And I got to shoot each model through 6 times. There can be no broken ferrule or blade. Obviously, there's minor dulling involved through each shot, but he has to go through both sides of the barrel each time, full pass through. But yeah, extremely impressive broadhead. I shot them once or twice before I started working at QAD. I thought they were impressive, but after working at QAD, honestly, even if I would ever leave QAD, I probably would never shoot another fixed blade broadhead.
Yeah, wow, that was an incredible trip, tons of fun. So, and I know I should probably know this, but could you just tell us exactly kind of what your position is at QAD and what you do with your time?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I started off at QAD about 2 years ago with their key accounts, like with the big box stores like Cabela's, Dick's Sporting Goods, Bass Pro, the distributors like Papes and Kinsey's. And then as time went along, there's some different positions kind of shifted. So then I picked up the Western region, and recently I picked up. I went from the Western region to the Southeast region, and I picked up pro staff. I coordinate a lot of the pro staff side of things. So that's what I do right now. I do, like I said, I do the broadhead testing. I do some other product testing with some of the rests we're about to come out with the MXT. But yeah, man, that's kind of a general background of what I do. I wear a lot of hats being at a small company, let's say that much.
Right. So you work with the pro staff. Do you know Levi Morgan?
Sure do, man. I actually don't handle him directly. Kevin, it's more of like a marketing type thing in our pro staff. So he deals directly with Kevin. But yeah, he's definitely on our pro staff, man. He's a pretty good shot, you know.
Yeah, I've heard he's won some awards and things.
Yeah, just maybe one or two.
So why don't you tell us how you got into archery? Kind of what drew you to the industry? What made you really love shooting?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, it kind of started for me I'd say about 4.5 years ago. I graduated college. I've always been involved with athletics, and after I got out of college, I was working night shift at a psychiatric center as a mental health counselor, and was always
Wow.
cooped up. So I always wanted to get outside on my days off, so I'd run around in the Blue Ridge Mountains that are right here at the base of where I live here in Virginia, which is absolutely gorgeous. And I was just hiking around, got involved with a lot of camping, and I used to do bird hunting with my dad while I was younger, some pheasant hunting. And I just kind of dawned on me one day. I was like, man, I need to get back into hunting. So I kind of Googled some stuff, was like, yeah, why not pick up a bow? Next week, bought a bow, fell in love with it. It's really fun pulling back a bow. The challenge of hitting something so small from different distances, and really what kind of drew me into it was the tuning aspect of it. I mean, as you know, compound bows are they're like a machine. They're a sports car in
Right.
some ways,
Yeah.
with different tuning methods. So that's what kind of drew me into it, man. And ever since, I've been hooked.
Yeah. I mean, man, it's pretty much the same story for me. It was kind of like I remember when I bought my first bow. I remember my dad made me buy one. You know, a lot of kids they get it for Christmas or something. And I just remember I had to buy it, and it just kind of seemed to mean more to me through that. And I would shoot it as often as I could. And I remember getting really excited about like the first time I shot a 5-inch group at 40 yards. I mean, those were good times.
Yeah, that's definitely a satisfying feeling. It never gets old when you're hitting the bullseye. That's for sure.
So you got into archery that way. Now, what was and that was kind of your first experience hunting with a bow. How'd you get into target archery?
Yeah. Well, to be completely honest with you, it was kind of random. About 4.5 years ago, like I said, I got involved in just into shooting a bow, and I would hunt things like to shoot groundhogs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after about 2 seasons of getting skunked in the Blue Ridge Mountains, I realized it was like, okay, this is challenging. I need to step my game up, and I wanted to do pretty much anything to get better at shooting a bow because I just loved shooting.
Mm.
So last year, about a year and a half ago, I decided to make the jump into target archery just to become a better shot in general. And I bought some specific target archery equipment, like longer stabilizers, different longer axle bow, stuff like that, and just learned the art and the tuning aspect and the precision side of archery itself. And really, man, again, fell in love with it all over again. It's a completely different side of archery than in some ways than what bow hunting is, as far as what you have to really focus on. But yeah, I'm completely obsessed.
Now, so I've been really big into bow hunting, but I haven't really got into the target archery side. So like, if I wanted to get into target archery, how would I go about doing that?
Sure, yeah, that's another good question. And disclaimer, I'm by no means a professional archer or an expert in these particular areas, but I'll give you kind of my where I started. Obviously, there's a lot of forums online that you can get some good information on. Some good information. Obviously, you have to be careful where you grab that. You just can't go from some archery talk forum. But I just started picking some people's brains, a couple people at work. Really, when it comes down to the basics from shooting a bow, from bow hunting to target archery, it's pretty much the same fundamentals. But there's different. What really kind of was a learning curve for me was the gear involved with what stabilizes the bow better. Like with target archery, you see the longer stabilizers. Obviously that has stabilization effects in wind and at longer distances. Different sights that are click to tune, so they're more precise. Goodness gracious, what else? Longer to axle bows are generally better shooting platforms. But I just scoured the internet, asked anyone who had any sort of clout in the industry, and I've asked Chance Bobef is on our pro staff. I've asked him a couple questions. I've picked Brandon Reyes' brain. He true balls right down the street from us. So really, man, anyone who had any sort of knowledge that had any more clout than I did, I just asked questions and kind of just chipped away from there.
So, what release do you shoot? That's my question.
Right now I shoot an HBX. It's kind of a hybrid back tension. You can shoot it different ways, and that was the biggest learning curve for me. Was I really wanted to learn how to shoot. I guess they would call it an unconscious shot or a surprise shot.
Right.
And a hinge release, I guess the technical term for it is, I guess the way to really learn that. And that is the biggest learning curve that I've found in archery. And honestly, I'm in nowhere near mastering it. I've gotten a lot better over the past year of learning it. But yeah, right now I'm shooting a true ball HBX. It's an awesome release. Love it. So
you say it's a hybrid. Does that mean that it's both back tension and trigger?
Yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, you can shoot it with a trigger. Basically, what they did, excuse me if I explain this, if I really butcher the description, but it's the first of its kind. They basically machined down the middle of the handle where it basically hinges down the middle. So you can shoot it as a back tension, or you can put a button, a thumb button on the back of it, and you can shoot it as a thumb button as well. So there's different ways. I think there's 4 or 5 different ways you can fire it, but I use it as a back tension, but you can also put a thumb button on there.
So now, do you hunt with that same release?
I have not tried, no. Last year I hunted with, it was a Fang 4-finger, but I've not hunted with a true back tension yet, but I plan on doing that this coming season.
Well, like that scares the pants off of me. Like, I don't think I would want to hunt with a back tension. Does that scare you at all?
Yeah, it's pretty intimidating just even shooting at a still target because you're trying to train your brain to not focus on pulling a trigger. So you're just pretty much focusing on the process of the shot, and it becomes second nature. I grew up playing sports, so I kind of related to people when they ask me that, when you're playing a sport and you don't realize that, whatever action you're trying to take is happening, it just happens naturally. That's how I correlating the description of a back tension. When the shot goes off, it feels natural because of just repetition of you doing it over and over and over. You're not necessarily focusing on, pulling a trigger. You're just focusing on the motion of, pulling through, the shot and engaging the correct muscle groups, and then it goes off.
Wow. Yeah.
It is intimidating, and I'm sure, I know, like Levi, he uses a back tension while he's hunting. I'm sure it's just, it's a lot of experience that, it's something you have to get used to. But yeah, I mean, you have to take into, of course, ethics when you're hunting a live animal if you really have the skill to do it.
Yeah. I currently shoot a thumb release, and I really like it, but I mean, anybody that was listening to the last podcast knows that I shot a doe really poorly last year, and I actually released that video today. If you guys want to check that out, that's on our YouTube page. But
sure.
And it's just a horrible shot. And I thought that my thumb release was going to kind of solve whatever jerking problems I had, because I had to hold it back with my entire hand. But I mean, I guess it didn't.
Yeah, and what I've learned, through John Dudley is actually a great, insanely great reference if you're looking for like back tension type information. You can shoot a trigger release or a thumb button or a hinge. You can shoot those all back tensions. Now, there's different strategy and different kind of techniques involved, but kind of the same fundamental concepts behind it. But yeah, I mean, if you're not doing it properly, I mean, yeah, you can still punch the trigger for sure.
All right. Well, that's good to know. So we actually, we're trying to get people to send in questions, and I'm having the hardest time getting people to send in questions. But I did finally get one question Of course, it had to come from a family member, so it was my cousin. But he wants to know, what do you recommend for people that struggle with consistency?
Okay. Like consistency as far as like like their arrows aren't grouping where they want them to group, or like consistency in like form, or
I think probably all of the above there. I mean, so my cousin Ben, he's been in some of our videos, and I'm sure will be in the future. And I think he just bought his first new bow maybe 2 years ago, and he's a big golfer and a big athlete, so doesn't really have a ton of time to get out and hunt and shoot his bow and everything. So he wants I think what he wants to know is how he can be more consistent in his practice and while he's hunting.
sure. Yeah, I think first it starts with knowing your equipment. At least in my opinion, there's been times where I thought I've been shooting out of my mind, but my arrows are going all over the place, and I realized that it was a minor like a tuning issue. But past equipment, I think it comes down to honestly, man, confidence and mentality. Archery is such a mental game. It's like, I mean, anything, if you're thinking too much, there's a lot that can go out of whack. So I think, at least from my perspective, my own personal experience, when I go out and shoot and I'm confident in, my form, each time I'm pulling the bow back, I'm making sure that I'm anchoring the exact same. The pressure in my grip feels the same. And then I'm ultimately confident in my mind before obviously I go into the shot that I'm going to execute the shot well. I think that's gone miles for me.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about hand positioning, like when you're grabbing the bow, because that's something that I think I've struggled with. I feel like that's the easiest part for me to be inconsistent about, because like when you switch into later seasons and it's cold out, you might be wearing a glove, grabbing that aluminum riser, it gets pretty cold,
Yeah.
so you want to wear a glove or something. What would you recommend? Do you recommend just not wearing a glove and kind of putting up with the cold, or do you recommend wearing a glove when you're practicing? How would you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I personally don't like wearing a glove when I go hunting because of hand torque. When you put, a big glove on, yeah, you're probably more inclined to torque the bow or grip the bow differently. But yeah, it really comes down to practice. I mean, I know plenty of people, most people probably do hunt with gloves, or some sort of, whether it's a thick glove or a thin glove. But yeah, I would recommend that, yeah, you practice, how you play kind of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you plan on using a glove, yeah, definitely practice with it, a couple months before hunting season, so that you're becoming proficient as far as you're consistent with your hand positioning. But I know guys like, I think, what's his name, Jim Burnworth, like he goes out to Alaska and he doesn't even put a glove on. So, that really comes down to personal preference in my mind. But yeah, hand torque will definitely decrease your accuracy if you're twisting the riser in any way.
So I saw Levi was taping up his handle, and I wasn't really sure why he did it, but and then I proceeded to do it, of course, because you got to do what your heroes do, right? And I did it, but what I found was that I thought that it was easier because I don't wear a glove when I'm hunting either. And I found it was easier to grab my bow when it was cold because it was taped and there was just something kind of between my hand and the bow.
Yeah.
Do you tape your riser at all, and do you know why Levi does it?
I actually don't tape my handle because it just the contour, the machine riser that I shoot right now, I shoot an Elite Energy 35. It's comfortable for me, but I think a lot of the people who do tape the riser have either they like the feel of the tape, or they're looking for a different, what do I want to say? I guess a different shape. They try to contour the tape and tape different thicknesses around the actual handle to get a feel that they like. But no, personally, I do not tape the handle. But yeah, those aluminum risers get pretty stinking cold in the dead of winter when you're hunting. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of. I remember we had one late season hunt, and I didn't get any film on this hunt, but it was so cold. Just grabbing my bow was like it just hurt, like it stung, like in a very unique way. You know, like I'm no stranger to cold. That was a different kind of cold.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, my friend. It's not fun, that's for sure.
So yeah. Okay, so next question. This one also comes from my cousin Ben. What do you do to calm your nerves at full draw? And I know, you know, you do the target archery thing too. So could you kind of talk both hunting as well as target archery?
Yeah, so with me personally, man, that's a really good question. I haven't really thought in depth of that, but I think it comes down to your process and, you know, in practice. I think if you're in a situation, whether it's, you know, you're shooting at a tournament or, you know, you're at full draw on an animal, and again, the mental side is if you practice the motion enough and you're confident in yourself, I think as far as settling yourself down mentally, at least for me, comes naturally. I know I've put in the work. I know I've studied my equipment. I know my setup's correct. I know I have everything aligned as far as whatever situation I'm putting myself in. So I would recommend anyone, you know, it comes down to just putting in the work and really knowing, you know, your equipment and you know, your shot execution, really.
Now, do you guys hunt out of tree stands out where you guys are?
Oh yeah, that's big time. Honestly, man, and I hate to make this an excuse. I think that's one of the reasons why I continue to blank. I'm such a noob hunter. I actually don't own a tree stand. I'm kind of stubborn about it. I like hunting on the ground, so I'm spooking deer left and right, especially these whitetails. They're pretty shifty animals. So, but yeah, the majority. I hate to throw a percentage out there, but I would say 90% of people that are whitetail hunting are probably hunting out of a tree stand around here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I mean, I've tried to do some spot and stalk stuff, and man, it's just they're just so good. You know, it's like you're just trying to fool them in their own house, and it's just so tough.
Oh yeah, they're a pretty cool animal. I mean, I know their smell is, I mean, through the roof. I mean, they can smell something from a mile away, and they can sense movement. I mean, I remember I barely even moved, and you know, I remember a doe was 50 yards away, and half my body was covered by a rock. And I mean, any slight movement, man, they'll pick up. You know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got my fair share of busts under my belt for sure. So let's talk about tuning for a fixed blade broadhead, because I don't shoot. I shoot your Ultra Rest, but I don't shoot the Exodus because I found that it flies a lot different than my field points. What would you recommend for me tuning my bow, trying to get it to see or trying to get it to shoot a fixed blade just like it shoots my field point?
Sure. I think broadhead tuning is a pretty interesting subject. I've did a little bit of research with it, but what I found personally with our broadheads, and I can't really speak, to any other broadheads that haven't done extensive tuning, is first, I recommend, depending on the bow you have, if you have a yoke, like a PSE, a Bowtech, a Hoyt, I recommend that you maybe play around with a little bit of yoke tuning. But before that, obviously make sure that your center shot, your cams are timed, and I like to shoot high-profile vanes when it comes down to fixed-blade broadheads. I shoot A Max Hunters, but like a blazer vane will do fine, and I like to put as much helical on there. Also, I think forward to center and a heavy arrow is completely underrated when it comes to down to hunting. A lot of people are shooting light. When I take a lot of technical questions and we break stuff down, a lot of people are shooting extremely light arrows, and when you put something that has blades on the end of your arrow, There's going to be right out of the gate, once it comes off your string, it wants to go a different direction, technically, because the blades are steering it. So I like to put 50 grain or 100 grain inserts in my arrows. And I found that when I put 50 grain to 100 grain inserts, I generally shoot 85 or 100 grain broadheads because of the weight of the inserts I put in there. And as long as I have a high profile vein, if it's still flying not like my field points, and that's going to vary depending on the cam system of the bow, then what I do is I yoke tune, to go back to the yoke tuning. And that becomes, depending on, how far you're planning on shooting, that can become a little bit of a complicated testing process. But I found a lot of success in that. Generally, depending on the bow manufacturer and how my broadheads are flying, I've only had to take or add, a full twist in order to get them to fly like my field points.
Okay, well, that's a lot of vocabulary. I don't know if even I understand all that. But when you talk about yoke tuning, can you just kind of exactly what that is? Sure.
So the yoke is the V cable that comes off the top cam. Now with the Bowtech, I don't think with the diamond bows that Bowtech owns, but the actual Bowtech brand, they'll have it on the bottom limbs and the top limbs. It's just basically that V cable system that hooks to the actual limbs.
Sure.
So what that does is, and again, I'm no expert. This is just me personally testing and a little bit of research here and there. The limbs, especially with a split limb system, the limbs are going to have different deflections and be pulled differently depending on how tight or loose that yoke system is. So when you add a twist, you're tightening the twist. So then one limb is going to be basically holding more weight than the other limb. So that's going to change basically the direction in the they call it the knock travel of the string. So that's extremely important, and that comes down to different micro tuning things that I've been trying to learn and perfect over the past really 2 years of really getting traveling deep down the rabbit hole that archery tuning is. But
man, I'm gonna have to look into that and just kind of figure that out, because I tell you what, it's like there's a lot of especially the Exodus, but there's a lot of really cool fixed blades out there that I'd love to shoot, but I just can't. I just can't, because they don't shoot like my field points.
Sure. And, one of the things, too, that at least I've found is when it comes down to the fixed blade broadhead and just taking off your field point and screwing it on and going out to 20, 30, 40, 50 yards, however far you want to shoot, I'm not going to say it's extremely rare, but I would say it's probably a 50-50 chance, even with our broadhead, that just right out the gate, without changing center shot or without tuning your cams in a different way, that it's just going to fly exactly like your field point. So really what I like to do first, like I said, is yoke tune with bows that have a yoke system. If that doesn't work, then I go to, I play around with center shot.
Interesting. Well, that's a really deep rabbit hole, like you said. So I think I'll let you go. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but hey, thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, John, I appreciate you having me, man. Anytime you want to have me again, just let me know.
Hey, I'm gonna have to get out there sometime, and we'll have to go shoot.
Yeah, please do, John. Let me know if you're in the area.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right, see you, buddy.
Yep. Bye. So that was Dave from Quality Archery Designs. As you can tell, just a super guy. Really appreciate him coming on the show. If you have any questions, like my cousin Ben did, just make sure to send us an email at heartshotoutdoors@gmail.com. We're not cool enough to have our own website yet, so we just got to go through Gmail. So heartshotoutdoors@gmail.com. Check out the rest of our videos on this channel on YouTube, and check out our Facebook and Instagram too. Those got all kinds of good stuff. Give us a like, give us a follow. We would really appreciate it. So Yeah, make sure you send us your questions for what you want to hear from us next. And we will see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in.